Good morning and welcome to Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. This morning is a special edition dedicated to asking the need for and what exactly a new constitution review is up to. It would appear that democracies, particularly in Africa, need to be propped up because they are failing and military coups are becoming desirable. People have been applauding military takeovers. What exactly do we do with the Constitution again after the 2010 process that reviewed it and produced a 1,000-page document? There's a new team that has also been doing some work, of course, basing what they will do first on the Constitutional Review Commission's reports. We have them in the studio to ask the questions that must be asked. Are our governments poor and performing this abysmally because our constitutions have failed to provide the structures that will give us the dividends of democracy? But we will begin with brief commentary on the brazen vote buying in elections. In the last primaries of the NPP to elect their presidential candidate or flag bearer, it is now open secret that candidates paid monies. The monetization, are there laws to curb it? If they are, why are they not being enforced? And too many journalists have become subject of attacks. Media houses have been invaded by party thugs. How do we stop that? I'm Samson Ladia Yanini. We'll be right back to deal with the vexed matters. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile, as always, we put Ghana first. We're asking very simple questions on this special edition. Propping up a failing democracy. Fresh review of the Constitution. Is that the way to go? And we're looking also at eradicating, if that is even possible to do, the brazen monetization of elections. What is the role of law enforcement? Our democracy is hijacked and in danger as we continue to hear from the experts if the monetization does not stop. And the growing violence against journalists. The Minister for Information was in Parliament this week and spoke about it. Actually, the Information Ministry also organized a stakeholders conference, and the world covered it, about the growing impunity in violence against journalists. What is the role of the state and law enforcement? Kujo Nkrumah has some ideas. We'll test them, whether that is how to go. Now, my guest in the studio right now, Anthony Forson Jr. He's former president of the Ghana Bar Association, and he's a member of the Constitution Review Consultative Committee. Also here in the studio is Clara Berry Kasati. She is lecturer in law at the University of Ghana Law School and the chairperson of the Constitution Review Consultative Committee. Joining us via Zoom will be John Nwoza, who is a member of the Constitution Review Consultative Committee. He is an auditor. We also have Oliver Baka-Vomawo, researcher, and he worked tirelessly and in a central manner with the Constitution Review Commission that brought us this 1,000-page report on from a political to a developmental constitution, which recommendations are yet to be implemented, and this committee is also looking at. He's a reform advocate. His group, the Democracy Hub and Fix the Country, have been insistent on the need to overhaul the constitution. Dr. Mame Mensah Bonsu, Mame Abena Mensah Bonsu. She is a constitutional theorist. She's associate professor at the Ashesi University. Joins us also via Zoom. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for making time this morning to join us.
Thank you.
Great. So let's begin with our preliminary. We'll spend the first 30 minutes looking at these matters that deserve some, examination, particularly with the caliber of people we have on the show. So we see how they can help with policy direction and how the nation should go about these matters. And as you are aware, the NPP has elected its standard bearer, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, who is the vice president. It took a period of campaign, and it's become very open now that it is no more a secret that votes were bought. Well, they say that was TNT that was being given to people. Kenneth Japan gave 300 cedis per delegate. Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia's campaign also gave 400 cedis per delegate. So Ken would have spent somewhere averagely, would have spent about 60 million Ghana cedis on the delegates, just for that, not the other campaign processes, and the campaign before now. And in that case, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia would also have spent about 80 million Ghana cedis on this process. Some of the delegates were angry, and they spoke to the press because they had not received their monies, particularly from the Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia camp in the Yensuano constituency. As we know now, a deputy minister for tourism, Marco Krekumante, has declared publicly, okay, he said it's secretly, but now it's public, that the money that was entrusted to his custody for distribution to these delegates, he has returned it back to chest. He doesn't want any problems. The people in charge of that constituency who were supposed to be in control of the campaign are also blaming one another. Let's listen to some of them.
As delegates, as we are going into election, they have some token for us. So we received Bawumia's token, and then instead of kind people, his coordinators to give us, they refused. We were calling them since morning, 2 hours, they are coming, they never came. So we called from Accra to report them to the PA. The PA called the regional coordinator. The regional coordinator called them. Before they will come, they said they've sought the people out and given out the money already. So the rest of us, we are not entitled for anything.
To give me my money. And why you don't want me to come out to tell me whatever is going on? You have seized my money since they started the tour. Why? You kept my money. You are telling me that Mr. Aban has seized my money because I'm working for Kennedy Japan. Meanwhile, you are working for what do you call it, Bawumia, but you came for me to collect the money from me. So why you don't want me to come out? My coordinator is Obosika. He has seized my money simply because he wanted me to support Bawumia. I was at the Bawumia camp. Bawumia gave us money. This man seized the money because I came out for public to know whatever. She doesn't want me to, have my peace of mind.
But have you voted?
Yes.
Have you voted?
Yes.
But what's your issue now?
My issue now is since the candidate started the tour, my coordinator has seized my money, getting to 1,200 cedis. When we confront him, he said he is not going to give me the money until I will support his candidate. Meanwhile, I was in the same candidate with him.
Honorable Ken Sikano, Nipa Miensa, Akuchi Sikani, Nipa 17 or album. Nipa Miensa, I have one police station chairman, a friend of Fiawa. Ono, I provided a moon 6,000 about the point on Pocon Topano for the 6,000 about. But I put the poor, or now the same police station, and also the 7,000 smooth Yamana. And one your former deputy coordinator, on also Negre, Ebia Codino, on also the Aba, Aka Rollins, yes, about the Rollins, on the up to lakeside, on also this kind of journey. Until past 17, Nipa train, or much is getting in I am 1 city up till now. I have about 2 o'clock. No, can see Kanye and Sankai.
I said delegates beer nothing.
I said delegate beer 300 Ghana cities. For about me, 400 Ghana cities.
If we answer, if we are to do this, we answer. If we are to do, we answer. So far, about me, I am funny.
I then I'm morning in a do it. Now, which is 400 cities. Oh, not the 1 year, Obia or your party in Bakeke. On at Yama 300. That is moody at them. For 8 years, 8 years. Oh, come on, Miss Car. 400 cities. 8 years. I am penny for control, and I'm almost saying. Constituency executives in and no mamma got to abandon your mamma saying,
Let's also not be hypocritical. You go around to campaign, and people also leave whatever they are doing to make a sacrifice to meet you. At that time, I'm talking about the campaign time before I bring it to the election day. And at that time, the party had not even opened, the party had not properly settled that we are voting at this venue, the time and all that. So they were all canvassing for vote. I leave whatever I'm doing to meet you at a distance, at a certain point of convergence. And when I'm leaving and you give me 100 cedis to support my going back, the 200 cedis looking at the distance I'm coming from, I don't think that is bad. That is point number one. Number two, the nomination forms of the aspirant, it is stated that you must be resourceful. Either you have the resources or you must be resourceful for you to be able to help us as a party. These two candidates, in fact, these four, these gentlemen, all signed up to it. Nobody runs a campaign from his pocket entirely. Not even Donald Trump could do it. And that is why all of them launched a fundraising form of activities. Kennedy Helene Japan did, Dr. Baumia did, Priya Kuto did, Dynamo, almost all of them. So that FMFR Power is convinced that maybe Kwadwo Poku can be a good leader for us. Okay, Kwadwo, maybe I'm chipping in my 500 cedis or 100 to support this journey of yours. Many of the funds that I know from Dr. Baumia's side was raised through many of these people coming together to help him. I'll tell you what, sometimes you visit a constituency and the constituency executives will tell you, oh, doctor, please thank this man for us. He's taking care of the food for all of us gathered here today. He's also proposing that where you and your team will lay your heads, he's paid for this, either guest house or hotel for people to pass a night.
Right. So you had some delegates from various places, ending with that very interesting delegate who says that Kennedy Japan is not in government, he's able to afford 300 per delegate. If you are in government for all this while and all you can afford to give the delegate is 400, that's an insult. You should be able to do more than that. So they have some expectations. And you heard Samia Uku, who is the head of the National Lotteries Authority and with the Baumia campaign. Now, let me get to my guests to have their views on this. Clara, it's been said many times that the monetization of elections is a big danger to our democracy. It's been difficult to talk about it in certain ways because the evidence was always not available in a manner like we have this time. What do you say?
Samson, I'm hesitant to say my frank opinions because I am not sure whether as a country we are ready to have that discussion. The reason being that, look, when it comes to the legal framework, there is no doubt what the law says. I mean, if you corrupt a voter, if you give anything of value to someone to influence voting, both the recipient and the giver have committed an offense. Now, if you are going to prosecute, if you are going to enforce the law, I don't know if there will be anybody left standing in terms of politics today. And what I always remember a curious thing. I have several friends who have contested for political office. So of course, sometimes when they lose, you talk. And one of them was so bitter in saying that this provision has to be enforced so that his opponents can be arrested because they paid. When I asked him, he said, oh, they paid more than him. Now, so it means that he too paid. Yes. It's just that they paid more. So it's like if you really are not paying, then you are probably just contesting for contesting's sake, but you are not intending to contest to win. And what is even more worrying is now see the brazenness. People actually feel or believe that they are entitled to be paid. But then again, if we are just looking at them and condemning them as the bad nuts out, are we really addressing the issue? Let's look at the root cause of the problem. We've always been saying that we don't have values. The 1992 Constitution has its problems, which it does. We don't have national values. But the truth is that there are national values. If you look at the 1992 constitutions, the values are clear, which are liberty, equality of opportunity, prosperity, inclusion, respect for diversity, freedom and justice, accountability, rule of law, protection and preservation of human rights, unity of our nation, stability of our nation, sovereignty of the people, respect for our cultural heritage, friendship and peace with all the peoples of the world, democratic values. But what has political leadership since independence, or let me limit it to the Fourth Republic, what has political leadership envisaged? Rather than political leadership fostering these values among their followers, we have created a political narrative that political office is about getting access to a national cake. Of course. And then once we now get to the national cake, naturally everybody expects to have their share of the national cake. And we actually talk about it. That our share of the national cake, how do we get our share of the national cake? So political party supporters have come with this belief now that political party is about forming a group of people together to get access to the national cake, and then everybody can help themselves from the national cake. So that we now even look at when we say that you should be able to mobilize funds, nobody wants to talk about where the money is coming from. And come back to our expectations of politicians. If you want to contest political office, for example, your immediate family, your friends, your extended family, your in-laws, their in-laws, endless. All of them have expectations of you, wanting you to be able to give them financial assistance here, jobs there, contracts there. Well, if you are not able to do that, you are not worthy of political office. So we have created a political culture where to be worthy of political office has something to do with money. And nobody wants to do anything about the source of the money. So until we start questioning where is the money coming from, rather than praising people for getting money to do all kinds of things and we don't know where the source of the money is coming from, we'll have a problem. So the law is there. But for it to be enforced, it must be backed by a certain advocacy and a certain culture, so that at least eventually we can enforce the law. But as it stands now, I don't know if
you say source of the money. The Political Parties Act 2000 is very clear that the source of funding for a political party must be disclosed. They must render accounts, there must be audited accounts, they must indicate the source of the funds, they must indicate donations, and so on. And this is under the mandate of the Electoral Commission. The 6 months or so after elections, they're supposed to audit. So we have the systems there.
So, but what is the result of the supposed systems that we have? Maybe we have the legal framework there. Whether we have the system is another matter. I am not convinced we have the system. I am very convinced we have the legal framework. But as to whether we are doing it in accordance with the legal framework is another matter. Because as again I said, the issue of political party financing, yes, there's the Electoral Commission, but there is also the people's responsibility, including the media, as I said, that to stop praising people who give access to money as the ideal or the mark of a leadership. So unless, yes, we need enforcement, but we also need advocacy to realize that we should not encourage people to believe that being worthy of political office means that you must have goodies to share. so that people don't start demanding for goodies. And then when you give them the goodies, then they say that, everybody else is complaining except the one who got the goodies.
What should we be doing, Mr. Tony Forsing? And first message in here from Frank Anderson Jr. says, our democracy is a sham built around poverty and exploitation of ignorance. All the individuals speaking clearly show that they are only delegate for financial motives rather than building a principled, meritorious, and civilized democracy. A CDD survey brought us the results that you need at least, at the minimum, 100 million United States dollars to prosecute a successful presidential campaign. For an MP, you need about 4 million Ghana cedis.
Where do we start? It's a problem that we all admit. The evidence is clear now. It is not rumors anymore. But I think that it is, as Clara said, our own evolution as a people from independence through our military governments up till now. It is the view we've had of politics and the results of political office. Unfortunately, it has been turned upside down. I will use my own example to show you that it is doable, and it has been done in other countries. When I was contesting as for presidency of the bar, a group of very senior lawyers came together and assessed the situation and knew that, you know how we do ours. No posters, no inducements, nothing. You have to actually move to the lawyers individually and speak to them. So they said that, look, we are going to go around the country. So you will need some money, even if you have money, to prosecute this political, let's say, political agenda. So they rather contributed to the campaign effort because they knew that once I get to a place, there will be hotel bills, etc., etc. And so for my campaign, I think there were about 10 very senior lawyers. Everybody gave something like 7,000 Ghana cedis. And I didn't feel anything. Now, when I became president, they were also not expecting anything because, well, there was nothing to share. Indeed, when we were digitizing the Ghana bar, two of the people who had, let's say, funded my campaign were interested. So I said, look, a committee has been set up to evaluate the bids. They put in their bids. They went. I think it was when they got about 5 ID companies, they were dropped. And that system was so transparent, they accepted that, yes, well, we didn't make it. And that was the end. You see, so I think that it is doable. One, I will blame the NCCE. If you look at their role under the Constitution, we've not been able to educate people to understand that political office is a trust office. So when somebody is in political office, he's actually your servant, as Mr. Kujato keeps saying. You see, but it's the reverse, that when somebody becomes an MP, honorable, we start even worshipping the very ground that the person treads on. So you see how it is skewed. Instead of the person actually serving you, he now lords it over you. Now, the signal that we are sending to those down there, that is the children, is that to become a leader, you have to pay your way through. So I hear now, even in university politics, in even secondary school elections, parents are even giving monies to lecturers and teachers, you know, to ensure that their children get elected into office. So you see, the trend is there. So this person who has become a school prefect thinks that that is how it is done. So he graduates to the university level. He believes that that is the way it is done. How do you expect him when he is now going to be a district assembly member or a parliamentarian to do differently? So we've got it all wrong from the beginning. So I don't blame the politicians. I blame the people themselves. We say that the Constitution is a fundamental law of the land. What does Article 1 say? That the sovereignty of Ghana resides in the people. Now, who are politicians? They are the people. So we groom them, and we expect that all of a sudden, when they become political leaders, then they change. No. Look at the people who were speaking on the TV.
Yeah.
They saw absolutely nothing wrong. Why? Because they are not educated to understand. You find it queer. She finds it queer that how can somebody be saying these things? Some people even find it laughable that how can you be expecting these things? I have given money to my friends, my mates who are politicians, both NDC and NPP, because I believe that they are good material for the nation. And I don't expect them, whether they become ministers or MPs, to do anything for me because, one, my economy is stable. That is my personal economy, so I can't expect anything. But if my personal economy were not stable, then I will expect that, he will either find me a job or help my personal economy to be stable.
So you refer to the NCC and the work it has to do.
Right.
And we know the NCC is so underfunded. So underfunded. The Electoral Commission that organizes elections for us gets like 7, sometimes 100 times what the NCC gets for a whole year. The NCC is important because of the education they will give.
Absolutely.
Like you are dealing, when you were canvassing for votes, you go to lawyers.
Yes.
First thing is that you won't even want to try it.
No.
First of all, it's not an expectation, but you even want to try to suggest to a lawyer that I want to give you money before you vote for me.
Yes.
There are lawyers, for example, when we're doing the conference in Kumasi, there are people who actually just fly to come to vote and go back.
Yes. At their expense.
Yes. So they are enlightened, so you can't pay them.
That's it.
So NCC is not funded.
Good.
How is he able to do this job?
So one, we've identified a first problem, education. So now we have free senior high school education with all its difficulties. Indeed, Mr. Kwekubu, who is our IT engineer, sat me down and said, look, Tony, don't expect the free SHS to yield results now. And he projected that in about 40 years, we'll start seeing the results of an educated population. So you see, Clara said that, yes, we have the legal framework, but the systems. So that's the difference. We have just started, 5-6 years of free SHS. So these graduates will be churned out. They'll go through the university. So it will take a certain period to weed out the face of all these kind of people who are in the system. 2, one thing I think we can do to stem this flow is people should get interested in politics. At least, if you are a card-bearing member of the NDC or the NPP, if all card-bearing members were voting, I don't think this will happen.
All right.
Because then it becomes like a national election.
So one of your suggestions here is that they should expand the electoral college.
Yes, so every person...
To include every card-bearing member.
Exactly.
So that you can pay.
You can pay.
All right.
Then secondly, I've heard some people saying that, that was Mr. Ikwetu saying last week that people were saying the downside of that is that MPP people will infiltrate NDC or NDC will infiltrate to choose a leader who will be, amenable to their cause. I said, okay, assuming that exists, do the elections the same day. So once you are an MPP card-bearing member, you go and vote, you are marked. So you can't go voting elsewhere. So I think that once we expand that, the monetization will come down.
All right.
Because the economy hasn't changed.
Okay, let's go on the Zoom and hear from our other guests. Let me begin with Mame. What's your view from where you sit? How does this endanger the democracy, the monetization, and what should be done?
Thank you, Samson. I think the first thing that this demonstrates is the limits of the law. Like Clara said, the legal framework may exist, but at the heart of it, you're going to need the people to want it for it to work. There's only so much that the law can do. Now, these are people who went to go and choose their leader, and they chose money. How do they expect their leaders, when they come into office, to choose their welfare? They themselves did not choose their welfare. As my senior Tony Paulson has said, there are economic factors there that have to be addressed. But at the heart of it, we have to understand that there's an unbreakable link between what the led accept, expect, and do, and what the leaders will do. If we are telling them that they have to pay us, we can't then turn around and say they are corrupt for paying us. So there must be some actual societal consensus that this is something we don't want. And I don't think we have that. We have, how many years has IOCO, SFO, I've forgotten they've changed their name now, the OSP, the asset declaration regime? We can set up institutions and legislations until we are blue in the face. First of all, after all these years, have we checked to see if these institutions' workings has somehow led to a decline in corruption in the public services? What's the data? And beyond that, our instinctive response seems to be, let's set up a body. But from the delegates who spoke, what body can reach all of these people? So there are education concerns and there are financial concerns, but there's also a sheer lack of will somewhere. You mentioned the NCC is underfunded. Who chooses the funding of our bodies in this country? We somehow manage to pay emoluments to people who are leaving office, but we can't find the money to fund the institution that we have said should get on the ground and create the people we have said we want to be. Then it's a choice. That's who we want to be. We want to be a corrupt society. So that's what we are. At some level, the agreement is going to break down if the people aren't willing to do their choice. If you can get qualified people to sit down and decide what the president should take as an ex gratia package for work he was paid for, but you can't find a parliament to insist that the NCC's budget is too small, and the NCC and its commissioners are not making any public case whatsoever for what their job is and how they can get it done properly, then we have an agreement that we will pretend that we care. And that's the problem that we have with monetization. I wanted to comment on Samia Uku's statement that, supporting transport is necessary.
The party, Doc, the party actually gave each delegate 50 Ghana cedis.
I know. So that's why I wanted to respond to that comment. I agree with him that, particularly given the economic circumstances of the majority of delegates, that it makes sense for their transport to be supported, but supported by the person or the institution that is hiring them. It is not the individual candidates they are there to work for. They are delegates of the party. So if there's any transport support that ought to be given, it is of transport from the party by the party's official sources. If the individual candidates see that the party is going to need support in meeting that obligation, as Tony Forson's friends supported his campaign, so the candidates should support their party by putting that money into the party's coffers so that it's distributed through the official party's channels. That they each go around and give money individually is not a statement that we are supporting transport because it is expensive for delegates. And delegates also should have a clear understanding of what they're doing there. This is not their paid service. This is part of their, perhaps, if you will, national service. They're choosing our leaders. If they don't want to do so, they shouldn't. But it should not be a service for which we become indebted to pay market value. I think when we agree that we want to change the way we do our politics, we will. We simply haven't, because it benefits some people at this point to do it this way.
Right. There are those who have been asking, what is the OSP doing? Because it's been charged with this mandate, because we knew that an attorney general will not prosecute their own people. You needed an OSP that will be independent and separate from the party structure so that they can deal with these. So people are asking, presently there's an assembly there's a prosecution ongoing by the OSP because a certain man who wanted office as an assembly DCE went paying money. And the OSP Somoto got into the thing, invited him for questioning, and went ahead to prosecute him. I'm reading the Political Parties Act 2000, Section 17. It says, every political party shall elect such persons as may be determined by the members of the party as executive officers of the party. The election of the national, regional, and constituency executive officers of every political party shall be conducted under the supervision of the commission, the Electoral Commission. The law defines executive officers for a political party to mean, that is section 33, the national chairman, the leader, the general secretary, or equivalent designation, the national treasurer, and the other members of the National Executive Committee of the party. I read this because the debate is coming up that the OSP may not have power to prosecute where it is an internal election. It is when it is a public election, as expected under the Representation of the People Law, 1992, that the OSP can prosecute. So if it's an internal one, the OSP cannot prosecute. In the Representation of the People Law, Section 34, treating, it says a person commits the offense of treating if he is corruptly either himself or through another person before, during, or after an election gives or provides or pays wholly or in part the expenses of giving or providing meat, drink, entertainment, or provision to or for any person for the purposes of corruptly influencing that person or another person to vote or refrain from voting, or on account of that person or another person having voted or refrained from voting, or being about to vote or refrain from voting, if he corruptly accepts or takes any meat, drink, entertainment, or provision of it in the circumstances and for the purposes mentioned in paragraph A of this section. It also has provisions about undue influence, which says if you do it either directly or indirectly, you will be guilty of an offense. And the penalty is about 6,000 Ghana cedis minimum fine, or 3 years imprisonment minimum fine, or both, and then you are prohibited from voting for 5 years. But here is the catch. You need the consent of the Attorney General to prosecute such offenses, according to Article Section 42 of that Act. What do you say?
I'm going to start with the debate that the OSP doesn't have jurisdiction to prosecute this matter because it's an internal party matter. The first thing I would like to note is there's nothing private about a political party. Nothing. It is a public body serving a public purpose. When they go and choose their candidate, the reason it is limited to the members of the party is because it is a group of people who have subscribed to one of the options and who want to push that as the society's direction. But it is not their private birthday party. A political party, by definition, is a public institution. We don't have any control over how people fund their birthday parties. There's a reason we talk about how political parties are funded and how political parties operate, because they serve a public function. So by virtue of them being a public entity, every institution that has supervisory control over public entities has jurisdiction over them. So if the OSP were minded to, it should be no bar to him that it is an internal matter of a public body. But even if we were going to, concede that argument, if you spend 80 million CDs trying to get people to vote for you, I think that figure qualifies as an organized or economic crime. So I think that if nobody else has jurisdiction, IOCO should. Because people are hauled before IOCO for much smaller sums.
Right.
If that is what we are saying, then we have organized lots of duplicitous institutions because we like bodies. So we have lots of bodies. It falls in the jurisdiction of one of them.
Thank you very much. Actually, in Yebi and Avalifo, the Republic, which went to the Supreme Court in 2000, the Supreme Court said the stealing of monies belonging to a political party is a crime against public interests. So maybe the OSP will want to look at this if he feels that it is not sufficiently clothed with jurisdiction to proceed. Now, Oliver.
Substance, just before you move on, can I make a quick comment on the national cake analogy? Because it's a
okay, go ahead.
Interests me.
Go ahead, Mami.
I want us to think about the idea of a cake. What is a cake and what is it for? Right? There's no such thing as growing a cake. We eat it. Yes. We cut it up. We disappear it completely. Now, when you go to a function and they're going to cut the cake, nobody at the function asks, where did the ingredients of the cake come from? How are we going to rebake this cake? The point I'm making here is that the way we think about our nation is predatory. We think of a national cake, it means we think we are going to eat it up. Yes. So if we finish the cake, we will have nothing left. And as long as we think of our country as something to be consumed, we're going to get nothing more than what we have now.
All right. Oliver, there's a message from one of our viewers who says, it all comes from our culture. You don't visit the chief if you don't offer something to start with. What do you say?
Well, I think that in many countries across the world have mechanisms for gift giving. You don't go to a wedding without trying to bring something for the bride. You don't go to a dinner invitation without holding a bottle of wine. Those are not invitations or analogies we can create that incentivizes, by some extension, corruption at the polls. I understand that there are certain things that are culturally that we do that shows our humanity and communitarianism. It is not an invitation as a society to be corrupt, as the way in which we proceed and do things. There's a reason why for long periods of time, going to a chief's house, for instance, and bringing a token is a valued part of our culture. Nobody thinks of it as influencing the chief to take a particular decision in their favor or against them. So I understand the need to find where is this problem coming from, but I don't think that I want to offer our culture on the slaughter board as justifying corrupt conduct. The truth is we've created a system, or the people of this country clamored for a system that secures for all of us the best of our talents. But those to whom we have entrusted the democracy have created a system where it's the candidate's wallet rather than the merit of the ideas that elevates them into leadership. It's a problem. Now, there's no denying that when you have created a particular dysfunctional system, huge jumping becomes the order of the day. So when you think about the Lands Commission, you think about any institution where you want to be able to procure a service, if the system is dysfunctional, people want to pay their way to get in and queue jump. The same idea and analogy applies to democracy writ large. So for instance, when Senior Anthony Fawcett was talking, he talked about the Ghana by-election on a micro level. And so that the personal situation of a lot of the people in there made it such that the idea of paying them was not contemplatable. But when you have a societal problem where the vast majority of people are poor, and the candidates themselves know that they will get away with it and they can pay their way off, it becomes then ingrained institutional expectation that they will get this. But I don't think that it is coming from the people. People make all demands of people all the time. But if we have created a system which says that when those demands are made of you, you don't respond to them. You don't say, the people or the devil made me do it. That is not an argument that we have ever accepted in our society, much less for people. So that's kind of my view on it. Now, if we had a system, for instance, in terms of even lawmaking, and we said that any candidate or whose candidate on behalf of the candidate, money was offered to other persons, will be automatically disqualified. Mm-hmm. I think that the candidates themselves would check each other because they would want to get the other person disqualified, that they would plan their own people to see whether or not they are giving money to the other side. You have to be able to use people's greed against themselves for the system to work. And that's one of the things that we have to be able to contemplate how we fix it. One of the things that I find peculiar, though, about when there's abuse of law and power from those who are in positions of power, it's almost as if there's an inherent consensus to look the other way. And we have experienced this. When the Sir John's funeral, for instance, happened, and the president and his entourage, the vice president, the chief justice, and high persons within our society flouted rules that they were making themselves, unconstitutional as they were enforcing them on our citizens. And this happened. We went to the police, we reported this incident. After a few months, the police told us that we have lost the complaint you brought. We sent that complaint 3 times to the Ghana Police Service. In all interviews we had, the media approach was, but is it realistic that these people will be punished? And if the tone is that it is not realistic for those in power when they violate the law to be punished, then there's no way out of it. It will, obviously, they know that when you pay us the money, nothing will happen.
Well, you took the view that those laws in the first place were unconstitutional, and you went to the Supreme Court and you were successful. They declared that those COVID-19 imposition of restriction laws were unconstitutional. They struck it off. Not to divert, your solution is that there should be some new laws in addition to what we already have. Already there's been the advocacy that the law should be amended to as it were, directly and explicitly catch these situations. The OSP, for example, an NDC NDC parliamentary candidate was splashing money during their primaries. They took that person in and they are investigating to prosecute that person. They seem to suggest that the current regime is sufficient. They can use that to prosecute these offenses. But you are suggesting that we should do an extra work, correct?
Yes, I think that for me, the truth is that a lot of our problems come from the refusal of institutions to enforce the laws they have. But it is also not an invitation for us who are thinking through the process to throw our arms in the air and say that there's nothing that can be done. That we must always continue to rethink through law and the better ways in which it can catch conduct, where language is always being found to evade that process. Now, one of the things I also want to make clear, and I don't want in any way, shape, or form to valorize what happens at the Ghana bar level as that being the gold standard. The truth is that there's no declarative system for when people have contributed to your campaign to disclose, because those empower a candidate better in different ways. That even if the two candidates before who are contesting for the Ghana bar president, for instance, and one receives monies or whatever it is for political parties, and the other person doesn't receive it, voters are entitled to know who is receiving what, and there has to be a disclosure process that doesn't exist. That's some of the campaign finance reforms that we're talking about at the national level as well. In addition to that, some of the people who are providing language to justify what is happening. The gentleman who you were, the MPP General Samir Wuku, he's a lawyer. The persons who are having the conversation about why we should normalize this, there are lawyers in the forefront of that conversation as well. And sometimes I continue to insist that the mother institution, the Ghana Bar Association, need to also continue to make its voice clearer as to where its stance is. But if everybody does unlooking, as the generation says, then obviously the problem will continue to persist and then it becomes larger.
All right.
And there's no denying that as years have gone on, the problem has become worse and even more brazen.
Okay, so we will quickly just take 2 minutes comments each on this next issue. Then we zero in or focus on our major discussion for this morning. Thank you very much for keeping your dials on Joy 99.7 FM and our affiliates across the country, and keeping your television sets locked here. We know the millions of you who watch from home and abroad, you want us to canvass these issues for you in a manner that will inform policy and also get those who are not doing what must be done to be done. Frederick is a lawyer. He says that the monetization of our national politics is unfortunate. Now it is no longer ideas and conviction, but materiality and who has it. No wonder we are where we are. And because of poverty, delegates will accept the fight over 400 and 300 Ghana cedis. So in that constituency, the delegates were saying that the executives were accusing each other that because they didn't take the vice president's money to the people early enough, some of them went to vote for Ken because Ken had paid a day before the election. and the party executives were hoarding the money, waiting to pay on the day of the election. They didn't understand what was going on. He says, I agree with Senior Tony Forsing. It actually goes beyond senior high school. My class 5 daughter's school has elections of their school prefect, and people were campaigning and sharing pencils. Oh, really? I'll be frank with you that when Tony Forsing mentioned it, I cringed and I didn't think that it's even, conceivable. Really? He says one contestant actually said in the campaign that when elected, she would change the canteen menu. Where did she learn that from? As they say, Asembeba, Frederick sending us this from Lakeside. One more message, and this is from Alhaj Suleiman. He says, if just 2 politicians collectively or cumulatively spent about 140 million on election primary, yet 19 people have died because they could not have access to the renal unit of Kolebu, which was closed down due to a paltry 4 million Ghana cedis, then our people must begin to see the price to pay for corruption is that it takes away your health, your education, and your future. By making elections so expensive, you are asking the politicians to steal and hoard your monies so that they turn around and give pittance out of it to you in order to control you. Unfortunately, this is happening at our universities during SRC elections. You're also confirming what Tony Forsing said earlier. And in fact, there's this NPP member of parliament, Alfred Obeng. He told delegates that there's someone who is seeking to contest him. And he wants those who are seeking to contest him to know upfront that he has kept some dollars there and he's going to pay the delegates so they can't outdo him. This is public and we have actually shared those messages. The party has not felt anything to reprimand him or do anything to him. He said if they pay even 10,000, he would do twice that per delegate. And he said he had kept that money there and actually expressed that he kept the money in dollars so he can keep the value against depreciation. This is where we are. Let's go quickly for this one, and I